and welcome to another happy gardening video. Today we are going to talk about these beautiful things. On my left, the orchid. Right here we have two, probably the most familiar, most easily recognized orchids. Now there are hundreds of varieties, but these two are some that we typically tend to carry here at Dothan Nurseries. A little fun fact for you bakers out there. There's actually a variety of orchids called the vanilla orchid that vanilla extract comes from. So the next time that you are in your kitchen whipping something up, just remember that not only is there a variety that is equally beautiful, there's also a variety that is practical and gets you those delicious desserts. Orchids can actually live to be about 100 years old, which is a very long lifespan for a plant. And whenever they do finally bloom, these blooms can last a ridiculously long time. Some can last up to months, not just your typical weeks that you would see with other blooming plants. A last little thing for you, we'll get to why this is important to know later, but orchids actually grow on trees or other plants. And in the wild, they actually end up growing upside down because the blooms get so heavy. So while we display them with this beautiful upright, almost like a centerpiece typically, in the wild you would see that green as the base on a tree and the flowers kind of spilling out underneath it. So we know they're beautiful, but how do we keep them happy, thriving, and blooming? Let's start with lighting. So they are going to want bright, indirect light. One way to know that they're getting enough light is actually with their leaf color. You'll notice if you were able to look closely that there's almost a light green to it. So if the leaves turn almost a foresty deep green, that's not enough light. And if they are almost pale and washed out, that's too much light. So you want to find a happy medium to where there's still a nice green look to them, but it's on that softer side. We've touched on light, so let's get down to watering. You'll notice that typically orchids are potted up in a medium made of mostly bark. That's one of the best. Every once in a while you might see someone mix in some sphagnum moss, but they love the bark because, remember as I said earlier, they grow on the sides of trees in their natural habitat. So what that means is you are going to want to go ahead and just fully drench them. I mean, sometimes I will literally take mine, fill up a little bowl of water and just dunk that base in there until those air bubbles stop coming up. That's how I know it's gotten enough. Take it out, set it in the sink, let all that water drain out, and then you can place it right back into whatever container you have, if that's not the container that you're able to water in. You will want to allow it to dry out completely in between watering. You'll notice the leaves will start to get a little bit wrinkled if you've gone too long, and if you're doing it too often, the roots that stick out will actually start to get these like brown spots where it's technically rotting because it's gotten too much water and not had time to dry out. So those are your two things you want to watch out for. If you're staying in between that and aren't seeing either, that means you've got a great schedule. Okay, so I know what a few of you are thinking. Great, I bought this gorgeous orchid. It looked great when I brought it home. I got a couple months or a couple weeks at least of bloom time with it. Now the blooms are gone, so how do I get them to come back? We are going to tell you today. So you do have one option. If the stem here has not started to kind of brown and rot or dry out, you can leave the stem and see if it will rebloom. Every once in a while that happens, but the second you start to see it kind of regress and go backwards, that stem's not going to do anything, so you need to go with option number 2. And that is to cut it all the way down at the base. You'll see where it connects to those leaves in that base area. You'll cut it all the way down there, and then you just continue to care for it like you normally would. So you're going to keep on that watering schedule, make sure that it gets bright indirect light, and in doing so it's going to help it get those nutrients it needs. One thing that could potentially set you back is if it's come time to repot, you've repotted it, typically they're not going to bloom for a little bit, so you're going to have to be a bit patient at that point. That typically can set back their blooms by about 6 months. You'll know that you need to repot it if that bark has started to kind of break down and become more soil-like, not allowing for that air to pass through like it would if it was growing on a tree. Okay, so we have 2 more things for you. As I mentioned, they like to be potted in bark, so we do carry that up here. This is kind of what it looks like. It's just literal bark. They love that, again, because they grow on trees and love the air circulation. Another thing is this is incredible. It's also got a cute little packaging, but this incredible orchid fertilizer. So what you do is you just spritz that on whenever you've watered. Make sure you do not get it on the blooms. It's too strong, the blooms will regress, and you'll typically lose a few of them. Lastly, if they do get some kind of pest, they are susceptible to mealybug and scale, this is going to be your best option. You're going to want to spray this on any infected area, including in that soil, just to make sure that you really get rid of it. Typically 1 to 2 treatments is perfect. And yeah, so that's what we have for you today. We hope that you enjoy these in your home and that this has been helpful. Thanks again and happy gardening.